Hello, this is Alexandra Bruce. I am here with Dr. Nick Delgado to talk about an epidemic that is affecting probably everyone you know, and if not yourself as well. There are some 60 pathologies that, at least, that have been associated now with estrogen dominance, and how so many things that we don't even associate with hormones, let alone estrogen dominance. We think estrogen dominance is like, you think of like premenstrual women in their late 30s or something. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about men, women, and children.
You can't go through life without being exposed. I mean, it's fire retardants in our bedding to prevent people from burning to death, but the fire retardants are loaded with estrogen chemicals. Even when you get a sales receipt, when you go shop and you buy and you touch that receipt, it's loaded with estrogen chemicals. I mean, you think about it. I've read about certain animals in Florida, in the swamps, and now because of mutations from these estrogen pesticide chemicals, either they can't reproduce or they become sexless, and they really, I mean, we really are bordering on a situation where much of what we see, I mean, men are becoming women. I mean, you think about Bruce Jenner. I'm not being judgmental. I'm just saying guys start acting, feminine. There's nothing wrong with emotions, but some people say, well, early on I felt this way, but early on they might have been exposed to these estrogen chemicals. I had a young guy, I mean, he must have been in his 20s, Alex, and he said, you talking about what it's like to feel like a man and desire a woman and being strong and physically fit and really be mentally focused and enjoy life and never be depressed. He said, I would love to be like that, but I got to tell you, I've never felt that way. Ever since I was a young man, since I was a teenager, I've always felt somewhat depressed, upset. I couldn't build muscle. I tended to have feminine characteristics. He didn't even feel comfortable going on a date because he knew he couldn't get an erection or have sex with the girl, even if he desired her. And that's a very frustrating thing for a man who, any man, because let alone as they get older, but he was in his 20s and he couldn't
That's
perform.
tragic. That's nothing short of tragic. You see it in the culture. I think we've talked about this in the past, sort of the snowflake phenomenon. That's like, it's a culture that is expressing estrogen dominance. So often, you see all these internet ads and sort of late night, kind of infomercials about cortisol and blaming cortisol as the hormone that gives women, maybe kind of premenstrual women, belly fat. And you're saying that no, it's actually estrogen that's doing that.
If they're noticing they have a lot of abdominal fat or heavy thighs, and they're gaining weight in areas of distribution that they're really unaccustomed to, or they have fibroids or fibrocystic breast disease, or some of these irritability problems. These are all signs that a woman, and in a man's case, man boobs and hair loss and ED and some other problems with water retention, all these things are all kind of related to estrogen dominance. So people don't really know what estrogen dominance is, but they don't equate estrogen dominance or estrogen with a silent killer. And it's really exactly what it is when it accumulates in your body to the point where it creates a massive imbalance. I mean, it's really been well described in the medical literature since 2002. I was studying this, and I found out that it wasn't just the estradiol, estriol, and estrione. There's 40 different estrogens that the body creates and manufactures. But now we have this massive amount of exposure from toxins due to Monsanto and pesticides and chemicals in our environment, in our food supply from GMOs. It's the form of estrogen. It's a harmful form of an imbalance that's created in teenagers and young adults and in men and women and even in seniors. And so a man by the age of 50 can have more estrogen than a young woman at age 22 during the peak of her menstrual cycle. So
right. Listen to that one. That statistic is particularly mind-blowing to me. I mean, men need to understand this. Men in their 50s have more estrogen in their bodies than a 22-year-old female who's at the peak of her hormonal the most estrogen she's ever going to have, because eventually she's going to have menopause and not have less estrogen than a man. And this comes from eating pesticide-laden food, by eating meats that are pumped with hormones, and just inhaling the pollutant ridden air. I mean, petrochemicals are estrogen mimicking compounds, and they're everywhere.
When we have excess body fat, ironically, the more fat we have, the more estrogen we convert. We then develop these symptoms, and the doctor may not connect that the uterine cancer, or ovarian cancer, or prostate cancer, or breast cancer is related to estrogen dominance. And now we know, many cancer researchers are starting to say that most cancers are related to an estrogen hormonal imbalance, believe it or not. Menstrual irregularities.
Oh, this is like, that can't be stressed enough. I think that's one of the most important things you've said. Yeah, that estrogen dominance is probably the leading contributing factor to many of the cancers that we're seeing in this cancer epidemic that we're living in today.
I think of how many friends and relatives and loved ones and clients have either the early stage of cancer, or have, instead of knowing how to detoxify the body, and that's why we created the website detoxestrogen.com, but how to detoxify the body, and how to balance these hormones, how to restore the immune system through optimizing the right hormones that build up the immune system to target and fight cancer, and really how to detoxify these environmental pollutants and chemicals in our body.
Another thing that you mentioned that I really think needs to be underscored is malaise and depression, and how this can often, lead to divorce, and to people getting prescriptions for antidepressants, when the real underlying cause is not any kind of, unproven thing that the psychiatry field will tell you about antidepressants. There's really no good evidence about antidepressants, and they're working. In fact, the only thing that I think has been concretely proven is that it increases suicidal ideation among people under 18. So I think maybe rather than taking a dangerous fluoride compound that people might want to take a look at, just take the hormone quiz at detoxestrogen.com and see if maybe you might not have an estrogen dominance problem that can be easily fixed with some herbal supplements, and no chemicals and no fluoride compounds going into your brain.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, we're an over-medicated, undernourished, maybe too many calories. When I say undernourished, we're not getting the caloric density of the nutrients we need. I think one of the takeaway points from all this is the fact is that you and I have a responsibility to inform people that this plague, this toxin, this chemical, this imbalance of massive amounts of estrogen is hitting our public. And then instead of addressing the cause, the doctor looks at this and goes, well, you're a cancer patient. The only thing I can do for you is chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery. Cut it out, burn it, or irradiate it, and kill the healthy cells along with the unhealthy cells. And it's just, we got to step back.
Yeah, I've been sort of hostage of watching my parents be destroyed by big pharma. It seems more like the drugs killed them than the cancer, and certainly in my mother's case. And it's just I wish I had known 6 years ago what I know now from just having worked with you for the past 6 months. It's heartbreaking. There's no words for it.
Did she feel she really lived a good life?
Yes.
Oh, that's beautiful.
She told me to be at peace.
Yeah.
Which was really not her thing. She was a very atheist person.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So I told her I just watching her fall and bleed and things like this had been just incredibly upsetting for me throughout the years. And
Yeah.
she told me to just to be at peace, but in such a way that was so unlike her.
On a daily basis, I ask myself the question, am I exercising? Am I outdoors? Am I enjoying life? Am I being with friends that I love and care about? Am I doing the right thing as a role model for my kids? I recognize the importance of sleep and quality of life, and I'm not willing to sacrifice my health any longer for that pursuit, of anything outside of quality of life and sharing a message with people. So I have 5 kids, and for my life, I live with passion, excitement, and energy, and I just want to share that mission through these quizzes and tests and guidance. And our staff is able to guide you to get that perfect music, and that's what happens when you reverse aging with this protocol.
Yeah, this is a really important distinction. It's that we start to get wrinkly skin and these sorts of signs of aging because our hormone levels have dropped. It's not the other way around. It's not like our skin gets bad because we don't have hormones anymore. If we have those hormones, our skin gets better. If we have the right balance, I should say, because then if it's imbalanced, then you have acne, or whatever. So, and then there's a urinalysis test that you can also buy that costs what they cost. It's something like $600. That's what it costs to get any lab work done. It's not a exorbitant lab fee. That's exactly what it costs for those things. If you want to get serious about it. But then, once you have these lab results, like how do you know how to, to prescribe yourself? Is it between the quiz and the lab results pretty much that you can figure out which of your products are the best to tackle, your physical challenges that you have?
Yeah, for the purchase of the test, of course, the money goes to the laboratory, but we have a lab director and they send us the results as well. And of course, with the individual's permission, we go over it. Our staff will follow up and call each individual and go over the test results. And then you're right, the quiz is kind of a forerunner to some of the things, and then the test validates or verifies what dosage, what frequency, how much of the, and which of the best of the Estroblock products one should use. And at the same time, we've developed some ongoing support, education, podcasts, and webinars. So I think the great thing about the test is, and the quiz, the free quiz and the test, of course, is a fee, but you're getting so much more than just the test results. You're getting to know the cause or the origin of possibly over 30 different metabolic pathologies that relate to this problem of estrogen dominance. And I think it's really the first time that any group has addressed this serious issue as an ongoing epidemic or plague. I mean, we probably didn't have as much of a problem back in the turn of the century. I know we didn't. I mean, you read the medical literature, it just wasn't that common to have what we now identify as estrogen dominance. So this is the starting point.
Glyphosate wasn't as universally used, and glyphosate ready food, crops, BT crops didn't exist to eat either until more recently than 15 years ago, 17 years ago. So yeah, things have changed dramatically. I noticed when I moved out to California, there seemed to be more genetically modified stuff there. When I bought at Trader Joe's, which didn't exist yet on the East Coast, and I just found myself getting just digestive irritability and just weirdness. That later I found out is pretty common if you eat pesticide-laden food or GMOs. But you're saying that there are how many? 12 different metabolites of estrogen, and so it's really what we're talking about. We want to get what Estroblock does is it blocks the ones really that are responsible for all the cancers that we're seeing, for the breast and prostate cancers that are epidemic.
I think part of, when you're naming a product, in the bodybuilding community, they already knew that estrogen dominance was a problem because these guys were taking very high dosages of androgen, like testosterone injections, and they would quietly develop these problems of estrogen
Yeah.
dominance. I mean, you realize a lot of them get
There's a whole
gynecomastia, even
language
though they
I'd
have
heard about.
large
I've never
muscles,
seen
they
it.
have big
They're
boobs,
called
and they have
bitch
to have
tits, like
surgery.
for
I mean,
like dog boobs. Yeah. And so they're not like big
yep,
round boobs, they're like dog boobs.
yep,
Oh God,
yep.
that's really rough. So there they are spending all this time in the gym trying to look great and juicing up on roids to try to look
Yeah.
fabulous, and then they end up having dog boobs. But okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I just couldn't.
Yeah, no, no. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the look-alike to Arnold Schwarzenegger that would be his stand-in for stunts, a big muscular guy, and I met him at one of the Mr. Olympiad competitions, and I remember being introduced to him by the head of the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, one of the CEOs, and he knew that I really know my biochemistry and science, and so he had confided that he had this problem of bitch tits or man boobs, gynecomastia. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you plan to do? And he said, well, like all the other bodybuilders, I'm going to have surgery to remove, these breasts. And I said, well, have you ever heard of Estroblock? And see, I had to use the word block because the guys, they don't, if I went into the complexity of it's going to go through these metabolic pathways, it's going to donate a cytochrome enzyme, it's going to convert it from 16 alpha hydroxyestrone to 2 hydroxyestrone. I didn't say all that. I mean, I just said it for your audience, for those who are scientifically oriented. But, I probably should have called it estrogen assist, through its pathway. But I remember the fighter Mike Tyson, and he was kind of infamous for biting the ear off of a fellow fighter there. And I think about it because his doctor, and he called me, and I could hear him in the background because, Mike has that kind of classic high-pitched voice, and he had a problem with estrogen dominance. And his doctor fortunately recognized it, and so he put him on Estroblock, our product, to help him, and we talked to him about a change in diet. He ended up changing his diet, and if you see pictures of him or see him in movies now compared to what he looked like, just a few years back when I first talked to him, I mean, here's a rather famous guy, one of the greatest fighters in history besides Muhammad Ali and probably Rocky Marciano. But I look at that and I think, if a guy like that could change his life and take a simple supplement like Estroblock and do a few quizzes and tests, and his doctor trusted us enough, and a lot of doctors around the world endorse our program as I write articles at worldhealth.net. I got a call from Hans Krugler yesterday, and he said that President Trump sent him a personal letter, saying that he was asked to be on his advisory board. And so these are the doctors that I train because, more and more doctors, I'm hoping that when they get educated and trained, that it'll leak through to the government and maybe to National Institute of Health instead of Monsanto and all these special interest groups, these big food companies, with the lobbyists pushing through laws that mandate vaccines and chemotherapy and radiation. And maybe just somewhere someone's going to listen and realize that, hey, if we help enough athletes and celebrities, sometimes people tend to look up to athletes and celebrities. And I think of you as a celebrity, Alex, and I'm really proud to have this chance and opportunity to be on your show. And I know you reach a lot of people, and they're skeptical. In this day and age, you have to be skeptical, and I'm skeptical too. But when you hear the truth, it's hard to ignore it, and especially since it's applied so well. So here's a guy, age 62, and I still compete in world strength endurance competitions, and I love to defeat these young, strong guys on steroids.
It's true. It is true. I just spent the weekend Saturday with Step Sinatra, and he said it was outrageous, your feats with lifting weights. I also, by the way, I was at I knew Mike Tyson back in the 90s. I went to his birthday party, and he was not having estrogen dominance then. He did have a high voice, but yeah, he sort of, I think he was having roid rage. I don't know what was going on with him, but he like blocked off my friend. My friend was trying to go to the bathroom, and he like put his arm up. It was a little scary. But he was surprisingly short. I could, he was like the same height as me with heels on. I was like, it was strange because I thought, Iron Mike Tyson. I thought he would be like huge. I mean, he was broad. He definitely was huge muscularly, but I think he was only 5'9" or something. Anyway, well, Nick, it's always great speaking with you, and I do recommend that anyone listening to this, if they're curious about the topics we're discussing, and they probably should be because they probably are affected by estrogen dominance. I think we all are. And if you have anybody with cancer in your family, or anyone with a spare tire around their waist, or kid with acne, or so many, depression, ED, you name it. So many of these things all go back to estrogen dominance that comes from the surfeit of xenoestrogens coming from pesticides, coming from GMOs, coming from toxic emissions, just auto emissions. Any petrochemical is an estrogen mimicking compound that can your body will try to process as estrogen, and will aromatize into all kinds of weird things, and start to create like a Rube Goldberg machine that ends up in sometime, in the worst case scenario, in cancer. And you don't want that. And now we know this, and this has been proven. There's been studies. This is not crazy talk. This is mainstream science. It's just not. It's not mainstream medicine yet, I guess is the way to put it. It's mainstream science. The literature's there. It's just not. Doctors aren't prescribing stuff that manages this because what is it, Nick? It's a bunch of herbal compounds that you put together, and you can't really, it's not. You can't just patent it like you can a drug. I was shocked to realize that Marinol, which is the patented FDA approved cannabinoid, is actually probably synthesized from petrochemicals to resemble a cannabinoid molecule, and so that's legal in certain states. It's very expensive, but why get something that's been synthesized from a petrochemical when you can get something that's made from an organic plant? I mean, what makes more sense to you as a health choice? Something that's going to foster health, petrochemical or an organic plant? I mean, it's pretty simple.